Let's bring in Hollywood divorce attorney David Glass for more on this. David?
People going through divorces are going through some of the hardest times of their lives, and a lot of what they're going through is emotional. And in any divorce, there's a huge sense of loss, and loss of relationship, of money, some friends.
Hi, I'm David Glass. If you've been following us in season 5 here on the Hourglass podcast, you know we're covering several topics, including music. Why? Well, we've learned that music can be therapeutic when going through the breakup process, whether you're singing it, playing it, listening to it, or writing it. Now, today, we're lucky to have a very interesting guest on the Hourglass podcast. It's music documentary historian and filmmaker, Denny Tedesco. Danny is best known for his award-winning film about the studio players behind the wall of sound, The Wrecking Crew. Now, The Wrecking Crew featured his late father, Tommy Tedesco. Tommy was one of the music industry's most sought-after studio players. Now, most recently, Denny, in his new music documentary called Immediate Family, offers an intimate and close behind-the-scenes look at many of the highest caliber studio players who have not only been the musicians in recording sessions, but also bandmates on the road for artists including James Taylor, Carole King, Stevie Nicks, Jackson Browne, Don Henley, Phil Collins, Linda Ronstadt, Keith Richards, and many, many more. Immediate Family has already racked up 18 awards and was released in theaters and on video on demand last December, and it's now featured on Hulu. Denny is here today to talk to us about his favorite breakup songs, his take on what a critical role music plays in getting through a breakup and why, and he's going to share some backstories about his work with some of the music industry's most prestigious artists. Hey, Denny, how are you?
Really good. How are you?
As someone who's intimately familiar with the music industry, from your own experience in your family to the documentaries and historical work you've done, why do you think music is so essential to many people when they have to work through the grieving process after a breakup?
I mean, it's funny because I've been around the world, with this film, and I see how music goes over every demographic. It goes over cultural, it goes over black, white, religion, and everybody's got their own music. It's always been something that's emotional. It's funny because I've always, on some of the times when my family have passed, my father was a studio musician, Tommy Tedesco, and I've always played some of the music of his, from not his personal stuff, but some of the movie soundtracks.
Yeah.
At these memorials, and because music can be beautiful, it should be beautiful, not always.
Yeah.
But it's always starting from emotion. Music. Do you know what I mean? There's always emotion in music. That's what you're always trying to strive. Now, just let everybody know, I am not a musician, by the way.
Right.
I am total civilian. I can't get the third chord down. Uh-huh. So you think I should be playing guitar, but I can't.
Right.
So I'm a person like everybody else, listening to music and feeling that emotion. Like I said, when I watch movies and sometimes there's no lyrics, I can hear the emotion. That's when the composer comes in and he makes it work. I'm not
Absolutely.
sure if I answered your question.
And no, that's all right. It's talking about that music usually starts with emotion. When I've seen other documentaries with singer-songwriters, and how they, or I've interviewed a couple of them. How did you come up with your words? And they said, I was feeling something, and the easiest songs just sort of came to me. I was sitting there, it came to me. I had to sit down at the piano or with my guitar and get it down on paper.
And it's really interesting because like I said, the last Immediate Family was my last film I did. And it's about the singer-songwriter era, the beginning of it, and the musicians that worked with all those folks. All the folks that I know, and it's something that we were taught years ago, you write what you know.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, heartache is probably the best thing for anybody. If you're going to spill it on paper, you might as well do it there. Recently, it has nothing to do with music, but I looked at an old journal of mine and I was looking at it going, wow, now I'm writing just what's going on in my life and I'm really depressed.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was like looking at these things. This is going on. This is going on. This is going on. I realized there's nothing good about it. There's no happy. So I'm wondering and maybe you could answer this. Do most of us write when we're depressed? Do we put it down on paper? It's a tool to get it out. So maybe that's why these, singer-songwriters write so much, it's trying to get it out.
Yeah, I think you touch on an important point. I mean, obviously, when things are great and going your way, there's not as much need for introspection or for them explaining yourself to someone or to a journal.
And I wonder if we should actually, because maybe they go, "Oh, I got this. Why am I happy right now? Oh, it's because of this. I should be thinking that way."
Right, and then and maybe we should pay more attention to
The
what's going on in our life when we're feeling great.
My serotonin is killing it today.
Right. And you know what? It's funny. I once saw an interview with Paul Simon, and he said, one of the songs he just won't play anymore is the "Feeling Groovy" song.
Yeah,
and we all love that. He just thinks it's too trite, but that's about feeling great and kicking your way down the street.
Yeah, and what's interesting, he doesn't want to play it, but I'm telling you, the audiences want to feel it.
Yeah,
right? And watching music from my point of view, like I said, the first film, Wrecking Crew, was the story of the session players of the 60s.
Right.
And there's so much music. There was 110 songs in there. And I watched people in that audience from different generations, or different, not that much, we didn't have any 20-year-olds, but you watch, everybody has a song that's a bookmark in their lives.
Yeah.
Good or bad. It could be a breakup. It could be their first love. It could be graduation day, whatever it is. So we're talking about every person's song is different for them, or the same song, but different for them. And I've seen the next one. And I've seen people in tears at end of these films because it brought back so many memories, and I think it's interesting now to have a 25-year-old and a 19-year-old. And when they talk about the old stuff, and they're talking about, stuff from 2010.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, which is, it's no different than what we had.
Right.
And they get all excited. So it's no different.
Yeah. And you mentioned breakup songs. Do you have any in particular favorite breakup songs that really hit it?
It's funny because I knew this was going to come and I had to think about it. And the only way to do it was to cheat and look and go, "Oh my God, I forgot about that." That's,
right.
And which is really interesting because one of my favorite songs, which is the premise of my last film, Immediate Family. When I say premise, it starts at that Carole King in Tapestry, is It's Too Late. And it's such a beautiful song. And it's so funny because we all sing it thinking it's us, it's about ourselves, or we think of something, related to it. I think that's one of the most beautiful. So another one from and also in the film that I use is Hurt So Bad, the Linda Ronstadt, and she kills it. Every concert I ever saw her in, all my footage, she just nails it every time. She's singing from the heart. What was interesting about Carole King, what they said about when she was writing these songs, Tapestry, they said it was very different than the old school of writing. She was writing from her point of view as a woman. It's first time, not the first time, but pretty close to her first records. Because don't forget, she was a huge writer. So she wrote all these breakup songs and love songs for everybody else to sing. Now she's writing from her point of view. And now she didn't always write the lyrics, but they together, it comes to, one of the other songs from my first film, which is something my father has a solo on and I love, and it sounds silly, but it's the Fifth Dimensions. Oh my God, I totally went blank. It'll come to me. Fried egg and everything else. Oh God, I can't believe, Lauren, I'll remember it.
Okay.
But sorry about that.
That's all right.
On that. But when we think of Al Green, you think of it's usually ballads for me.
Right.
For me, other people probably have other, hard hitting, rock songs, but I don't get emotionally tied to it.
Right.
One of the things growing up, my father was always called to do his acoustic guitar, which is a classical kind of like, Spanish style guitar.
Mhm.
Every time he would play, it's either a love story or a very depressing scene where someone's passed away,
Right.
and that just shows you what the instrument is used for.
Yeah. Yeah.
It brings down your emotion.
Absolutely. Now, from filming immediate family, do you have any interesting backstories about the inspiration for writers coming up with their songs?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because like a lot of these, like Don Henley, I interviewed Don Henley.
Mhm.
Or the story, by the way, Immediate Family is about four guys that started in the early 70s. It was Leland Sklar on bass, Russ Kunkel on drums, Danny Kochmar guitar, and Waddy Wachtel guitar. And they have by the way, they have a band called Immediate Family now. And they're just having fun doing that while they do other projects.
Yeah.
And the premise of that is the fact that they're brothers. They've been together for 50, 60 years now,
Yeah.
and they still get together and play. So we interviewed everybody. We interviewed Carole King, Jackson Brown, James Taylor, Linda Ronstadt, Don Henley, Neil Young, Phil Collins, and so many more, David Crosby. Don Henley, his solo careers is basically, he gives all the credit to Danny Kochmar, who said, he pushed him into being a soloist. Now, Don Henley's writing these songs really fast. They would get together and write, but sometimes like they would just, sometimes it could take weeks and sometimes it could take 10 minutes to lay it down.
Yeah.
The Waddy was one of the co-writers on Wolfman Jack. Sorry, that's my next film, by the way.
Mhm.
Is Werewolves of London.
Yeah.
And it was Warren Zevon said, "Hey, I got this title, Werewolves of London." And he goes, "I got to write a song." And he goes, "All right." And he just got back from London, Waddy, and he started putting things together, a couple hooks here and there, and all of a sudden it's done.
Right.
And they just nail it. And it's just put some, like they said, sometimes it'll take weeks, sometimes it'll take,
Mhm.
moments.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Here's a question that may seem a little strange, but it's coming from me as a former psychologist and current family law attorney.
yeah.
Why do bands break up? Some bands break up and others don't. I'm trying to find a connection to people breaking up.
All right. So here, it's really interesting you said that. The other day, I had a call with Alan Paul of Manhattan Transfer. There's a possibility we might do something with them. And we were talking about, there's four of them. There was the original, and then Alan comes in and this and that. When they're hot in 1979, 1980, in those years, they're killing it.
Yeah.
He said, we did see a psychologist.
Oh, wow.
He said, we had to, because it helped them get it out. Because, you don't want to hurt someone's feelings. You don't know how to say something. I think it's just part of, don't forget, a band is spending way more time than maybe a family.
Yeah.
And there's other things, I think, there's some, and they're all egos. I don't care what you say, but every one of a member has an ego.
Yeah.
And it's how you play that ego or work with it. Family members, it's different. But I think being in that situation where they have to perform, they have to contribute, or if they contribute, are they being heard? There's no different than a relationship. Am I being heard? I've loved that idea. Or, nah, it's not so good. Well, is it not so good because it was my idea?
Right.
So that's what's so interesting about these four guys. In five guys, Steve Pistel is the fifth member, younger. I say he's the kid at 66.
Right.
But they've all been part of bands, but they're not the band that's breaking up in the early days, maybe. But, sometimes they go with Linda Ronstadt for months, or they go with James Taylor for years or months, but they're not breaking. Sometimes they won't be called back. That's another, that someone's changing direction.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I always asked, how do you deal with that? You know, and it's part of the business. It's, you got to be a realistic in this world of music. It is a business. And my
Mhm.
father used to say, there's music and there's the music business.
Yeah.
Sometimes they mix, but in the end, you still have to, you're still getting a paycheck for something. And you have to give what they want for that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You
Yeah.
have to perform, whether it's in the studio, on the street, or whatever. That's how you do it. I think one of the things I asked one of the great producers years ago, um, Bones Howe. Bones Howe was, he produced Association, Fifth Dimension, a lot of so many things. And I asked, I said, what's it like when you're at the top of the world? You guys are in 1967, 68. You are the killing it.
Yeah.
You know, you're working around the clock. There's so much work that you just turn down work. There's no work to, you know. And I said, then you're not, you know, now I'm going from a point of view from a son.
Yeah.
And, you know, in 1989, my dad's barely working. He's still killing it as a guitar player. Still has chops and stuff, but he's only getting called for the movie calls and the, you know, John Williams or James Horner when they really need Tommy. So I understand what it's like for him to slow down.
Yeah.
Then a stroke happened. So I asked Bones, I said, what's it like when you're at the top and you're not at the top anymore? He goes, well, you got your ramp up like the minor leagues, and then you're at the top, and then you got your ramp down. He says, it's not about staying at the top. It's about taking that ramp down as long as possible.
Oh.
And I could relate to that because all of us, you don't have to be a musician. You don't have to be an artist. You know, we're all want to be relevant in our lives, no matter what part of our lives we are. If we're a kid, we want to be heard. If we're at the top of the world in our business, we want to be heard. And like at the end, you know, I still want to be relevant. I still want my, whatever my, you know, my voice says. I hope someone hears it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. Um, so what was the question? I killed you.
Why do some bands break up and
Yeah.
others don't? And
I think
I
it's
think
just
you
being
covered it.
heard. Yeah.
I think
I
you
think
covered it in a bunch of
yeah,
different ways about the therapy for the band, about being heard,
yeah.
about having a contribution. And sort of my follow-up was, I remember maybe, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, Mick Jagger and Keith Richards each had books out, and Keith
Yeah.
Richards was saying Mick was such a prima donna and like all sorts of awful stories. And they got right back together and toured, and they're still touring. And I think that goes to your issue that there's making music and then the music business. They recognize they've got a good
Well,
thing in terms of the music business.
I mean, I think the Eagles are a perfect example.
Right.
There's no love there. It sounds
Right.
like I think each one of them shows up in their own RV. You know,
Yeah.
they're seriously. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, you know, well, look, Daryl Hall, Oates, you know, Hall and Oates.
Yeah.
You know, it's sad because there is a relationship there.
Mhm.
You know, the Beach Boys was another example.
Right.
I saw Mike Love speak the other day, you know, in the new movie, you know, he talks about suing, you know, Brian and the family. Well, he's suing because his, you know, supposed from Mike's point of view, which is, I think, pretty documented, you know, the father, Murray, you know, sold all the publishing underneath him, and
Yeah.
didn't give Michael Love a lot of credits on some of the songs. So when they had to go to court to, you know, he had to do that for business sake, but they would be on the road again. You know, how do you do that?
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of wacky, but you know, it makes sense. It's again, business.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your film, Immediate Family?
Sure.
I watched it and I was thoroughly impressed with the camaraderie among these players over time. That they go out, they come back, they're right back to playing together.
Yeah.
What do you have any idea of what their secret is in having such a long-term, stable relationship?
I think any of those musicians, you know, from this era or any time, you have to be giving. You have to listen to each other. You know, I think that's what, and it's harder. Like I said, don't forget one of the lines in the movie, we're talking about them playing live. These are, by the way, these musicians would record the albums. They would record for Tapestry and Sweet Baby James and all these other records, but then they would go on the road.
Right.
Right. So they spent months together. So there are people that sorry, I just lost my train of thought, that basically would not be good on the road. Be great in the studio because we only have to deal with them for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
But being on the road is a totally different animal. Do I want to be with that person? And I've done that with film crews. I used to do IMAX films. And if there's four of us and you got one person that's a pain in the ass, and that could have been me. I'm not saying it wasn't me. But if there's that one person, that's 25% of your crew that's like, oh, God,
Yeah.
It's like, you want to move on.
Yeah.
So you got to gel. So I think all these guys, they have to gel. And they're all characters. It's funny because, they had to go through all those years of horrible things. Some of them, were drinkers. Some of them did do drugs. Some of them didn't do anything. Leland Sklar, the bass player, he had to put so many people to bed at night, he said, because he didn't touch anything. So it was hard, seeing your friends destroy themselves and then continue or get sober.
Yeah.
But, one of the great lines in it, though, he says, I think it was one of the guys says, it's not, they always say, we're only on stage for an hour and a half, the gig's for an hour and a half, 2 hours. But the rest is the other 22 hours that we're getting paid for.
Right.
Getting back on that, you come off the stage 10 o'clock at night, you're kind of high off of the whole excitement, get on a truck, get out of there, or a van, what do you call, bus, and you're moving to the next city. Let's do it again, start all over every morning, different,
Yeah.
So it's hard on those guys. So they spend more time, like I said, with those guys, on the road than their own families. And I think that's why, you see in the end, when I asked Russ Kunkel, how did it affect your personal life? He says, now I should have spent more time with my family.
Right.
It's hard though. It's easy to say that, but it's hard for us to turn down a job.
Yeah.
If that's our living, that's what we do.
Yeah.
So
is there anything about the film that people about the process of putting the film together that people don't know? Was there footage that you loved but you couldn't fit in?
Absolutely. So the background of this film, Immediate Family, was I was asked to do this film in 2019. They said, what do you think of this idea? It comes off of my Wrecking Crew story.
Yeah.
I said, well, that sounds great because I know all these guys' names. I don't know them personally other than Leland I knew. So I was excited to do that. And as my era in the 70s as well, so they instantly said that I pitched them the idea. The next day they said yes.
Wow.
And then the next day they said Carole King could be interviewed in 3 weeks. And I went, oh my God, I just pitched an idea.
Yeah.
Now I have to really know my stuff. Now I have, I'm reading Carol's books, I'm listening to albums, I'm going through all this stuff really quickly. And then within a few months, they booked Linda Ronstadt, James Taylor, Jackson Brown, Lou Adler, Phil Collins, and it kept going on and on and on. And I'm learning on the job as I interview these people. But I don't have the 4 or 5 guys in the film yet because I'm just concentrating on the stars. And then COVID hit.
Mm-hmm.
And that was hard because now it's like the world comes to a stop and we don't have a film. We have a bunch of interviews with a bunch of, stars talking about these folks. And it was hard because I didn't know what we were going to do. And we, as everybody remembers, but I slowly went out safely, started interviewing my guys. Now, if I had to do this again, I'd probably do the same thing in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
The guys trusted me. By the time I got to interviewing them, there was a trust.
Right.
And when you're doing interviews with folks, you have to have that trust. That's the only way they're going to open up to you.
Mm-hmm.
As well as, I don't have an agenda. Like, for example, Don Henley, one of the things that Don Henley, their people said, you can't ask about the Eagles. Well, So wasn't going to, but thank you. I won't.
Right, right.
You know, but and I get it. They're protecting their folks. So when I interview Don, one of the things I do is at the end of an interview, I might be done with my questions, but I'll let it sit there for until he gets up or she gets up and say, okay, thank you very much. Because I don't know what that person might be thinking.
Right.
In that last part, you see it. He's thinking to himself. He goes, I can't thank Danny enough for giving me the career I had. If it wasn't for Danny, I wouldn't have had no solo career. Now, what's interesting about this is Don Henley and Danny Kochmar did not get along towards the end.
Right.
And barely get along. I don't think they talk at all. So it's pretty cool to see people lay down their guard and share the true feelings. I'm sure you do this for a living.
Yeah, that's.
I guess I can learn from you.
I was going to say, as a psychologist, the last 5 minutes of the 50-minute session was when all the interesting stuff would come up, and they'd say all this stuff, and then I'd say, "I'm sorry, our time is up."
And they go, "You're killing us."
Yeah.
You're killing me.
And the same thing as a divorce lawyer. If we have an hour session, the most important stuff comes up during the 10 minutes. But that technique of yours of just sitting, just being willing to sit with the quiet, and so whatever they're thinking about maybe bubbles up.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things I do is like in the old days when we were shooting film, that was hard because I had 11 minutes a roll. So if I'm doing an hour interview, I got 55 minutes in a sense, and you have downtime for someone to switch out the film, which is going to be a minute and a half, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So I lost the concentration of my person.
Yeah.
So what I would do is I would just start an interview about BS, hey, where are you from? Da, 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 just mindless stuff. I know it's not going to be used.
Right.
And then I would tap my camera person and let them, start rolling without them knowing that I'm rolling.
Yeah.
Because it's the only way to get it, something that's warmed up.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Great stuff. Do you have anything? You mentioned a film you're working on now. Can you tell us about that?
Wolfman Jack. And it's interesting because it would be, in a sense, a trilogy of mine, being music, but it's also a trilogy about family. My first film was about the story of my father, Tommy Tedesco, the Wrecking Crew, and he was passing away when I started that film in 1996, and he passes away in 97. And I started that thinking I knew I could finish it, no problem. I knew the beginning, middle, and end, but financially I couldn't finish it. It took 19 years from beginning to end to get it out. But it was a story about him and his extended family, the Wrecking Crew, in a weird way. And, and then when this film came up, Immediate Family, why I hooked onto it was I liked the idea that they had this name, and it was about brotherhood and about sisterhood or whatever you want to call it, family. And when Danny was putting a band together for a tour, they wanted to name it something else. And he said, he goes, "No, I want you to name it Immediate Family because we're brothers." Okay. And that's how it started.
Yeah.
Well, this next one, Wolfman Jack, why I'm excited about it is because it is about and when I got asked to do it, I went, I want to know who Wolfman Jack is.
Yeah.
His name's Bob Smith. Can't get drier than that.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like the only difference is John Smith would have been worse.
Right.
Sorry, John Smith out there, and all the John Smiths out there. But it was funny, it's like we know him as Wolfman Jack as a personality.
Yeah.
And of folks of a certain age, only all of a sudden he drops off the face of the earth in a sense, not because his stuff isn't still out there, but it's not like an actor.
Right.
So anybody under 30 might not know who he is, but we know. And I asked the family to send me all their videos, and they've sent me so many videos of things. And I just get so excited looking at this stuff because I'm seeing the real Wolfman Jack at home with his video camera in 1985 or whatever. Yeah. And he's videotaping his family at Christmas, or he's, wherever he is, he's videotaping on the road, and it's him. And it's really, really cool to see that. So I realized that's my theme is family again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he was so, even though he partied hard, he worked hard, but he always got back home, and then they decided, let's move to North Carolina, let's slow it down, because it was just taking its toll on the guy. And
Right.
that's what he did. He moved back to North Carolina and worked out of there. The midnight special was over, I think, at that point.
Hmm.
And so, but again, he gives all the credit in the world to his family. So that's why I'm excited about that.
Yeah. That sounds like an amazing project.
I'm seeing videotapes the family don't even know they have.
Yeah.
Because I know it just got thrown up on the shelf like any other tape. You remember how
Right.
it's like our phones. When's the last you might have, you videotape something, but you never look at it.
Right. Right.
That's
Whatever
what-
happens to these photos,
Yeah.
videos.
Yeah, and there's one that I won't even tell you because I don't. It's not out yet.
Okay. Yeah.
For the video tip that I'm seeing, but like there's this one I share with you. He's in the car with his daughter, who passed away not long after that, and they're singing, literally singing a song, and it's dark at night, and all of a sudden they get pulled over by a cop. And you hear this all on tape. Hey, officer, Wolfman, how's it going? And he's like, he realized it's Wolfman Jack, and Wolfman's working it. Oh yeah, well I'm so sorry, folks. We didn't realize how fast we were going to. We'll just slow it down, and that's it. Got off a ticket for Wolfman Jack.
That's great.
It's one of the brilliant scenes.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. How can our viewers find you on the internet? How can they find out more about you and your projects?
Especially with these projects, folks, if you haven't seen them, please take a look. Wrecking Crew and Media Family both can be seen on Hulu, or they can be seen on pay-per-view on Apple or Amazon or even YouTube, anywhere you can find them. But you can always follow us on Media Family Film, at Media Family Film at Facebook, and same with at Wrecking Crew Film at Facebook, or just add .com and you can find us there. And new screenings we're screening around the country now. Even though we're out, we're still screening for like retirement communities, having fun screenings with public. So still doing it.
That sounds great. Denny, I can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much
for giving us this sort of fascinating backstory. And honestly, bringing up the emotion and family relationship with music is something I have not talked about with other guests.
It's funny because if I did a straight doc on the music, it'd be pretty boring.
Right.
I don't know it. I don't know music, so I'm not going to tell you how that chord, diminished this or major, minor. I don't know any of that, so I don't know what they're talking about. But I do understand emotion, coming from, I know why these guys, what makes them tick.
Yeah.
It's their insecurities. It's all of our insecurities. I think that's why we tick,
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much for giving me the chance to talk about that.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. And my people get in touch with your people
Oh,
about
please
when
do.
it's being released and all that business.
Well, it's like I said, it's out there. So the Wolfman Jack, I'm just looking for we're just looking for the investor to come in. So
great.
if you're out there, investor, you know where to find me.
Okay.
All
Excellent.
right, guys. Thank
Great
you so
talking
much.
to you, Denny.
Cheers.
Take care.
Thank you.